Okay, let's go for a ride. Battery on, ignition on, starter. Well, the last month or so has been real interesting. I had to take a short break away from the MG project. Had some issues with the Mini. I had so much video shot of both the Mini and the MG. I think I'm going to break this up into 2 episodes. But hope you enjoy. Thanks for watching. So something went crunch in the gearbox. So Mini's on the lift, and I'm going to be pulling the front subframe, engine and transmission out. This is a Mark III Mini. I've owned it since the early 90s. It was in really rough shape. It was a Mini 1000 originally out of Canada, but it had a lot of rust issues, shall we say, because the Canadians like to salt the roads. So basically, everything on the front end of this car I had to replace. Inner and outer rockers, the floor pans, the rear valance, the whole rear subframe. I had to piece out from about here down on the rear quarters. And a little bit on the footwells around the firewall area. But back when I did it, all of those pieces were not that expensive, and I'm looking back, I don't think I spent more than $500 on all of the pieces that I need to do it. But I know they're a lot more expensive now, but I went ahead and did it. I saved the car, and it's been one of the most faithful cars. It never really broke down. This is the first time that I actually trailered it home. I've ever had to trailer at home. It's been running really exceptionally well. The engine runs really good. I wasn't really being aggressive with it when it broke. I was just driving it. So maybe one of the other times in one of my more spirited drives, I pushed it too hard. I don't know, but we'll see. I'm going to pull it out, detail the engine compartment. Well, the front subframe with the engine transmission is out. I want to apologize. I had the camera all set up to record this whole thing, and I forgot to turn it on. And I already had the thing out, so anyway, that's what the engine bay looks like without an engine transmission. The mounting points on these, on both sides is a rear mount, a rubber mount here that goes to the floor pan, one on each side. There's the upper mounts here with these have the rubber bushings. to the body. These actually go up here to these large bolts, which are mounted, also rubber, to these guys. That actually supports most of the weight on this. There's like a cross member piece on here on the firewall. And let's see, and then the front, so that's those two, one each side. And then on the front, there's the mounts here. And these guys mount underneath here, right here. And from the inside, you can see them here and here. The steering rack is actually bolted to the lower part of the firewall on both sides. And let's see, there's an engine brace here for the top of the engine on the one side, and then there's another brace that goes on here over by where the thermostat housing is to brace the top of the engine. So I just about have this ready to lift the engine out. Right now the engine is sitting there just on the rear mount here, or the right side mount, I guess, the rear part of the engine. And then there's the front mount here. And I pretty much have everything. Oh, and there's another brace down here, which I have disconnected. So this is actually ready to lift off. Because of how everything is so tight around the header here, I just leave this on until I lift this out. It's much easier. I think the header's okay. I'm going to go ahead and clean this up. This is what, 28 years since I've had this off. So I'm going to, you can see the heat paint's kind of flaking off, but I think the header is still good. Let's see what else. 4-pot disc brakes. These are from, I think they're called Mini Spares or Mini Sport. 4-piston brakes with vented rotors. I have the engine and transmission separated. I'll show you real quick the engine. I made an adapter for my engine stand to bolt to the engine so I can spin it around upside down. I wanted to keep it so when the engine's upside down, I can put the transmission transfer case back on the bottom, and this is all open at this end for the clutch assembly and flywheel and everything. Anyway, yeah, I got this kind of cleaned up. It was pretty oily. These engines, typical British, they leak oil everywhere, not just one place, but everywhere. But I got it pretty much cleaned off. I haven't done any painting or anything on it. The engine does not have an oil pan. The transmission is actually the oil pan. The engine and transmission share the same oil. This is the rear cover that goes on here. The large hole in the center is where the crankshaft seal is. And then there's an idler gear. So the crank here, idler gear, and then this is the drive gear into the transmission, 4-speed synchromesh transmission. What happened was, this is the oil line here, and there's an oil pickup tube that's supposed to be attached here, come across and go down into the bottom of the sump, and then angles over to the left side of the engine. This is the front, back. That's the left side. Over in this area down below, this is the tube. Yeah, it's not supposed to be there. This is supposed to be attached here. It appears to me that this was a bad weld, or it was brazed on there. This engine's been in this car for what, 28 years, and this is the first time I've had to take the transmission engine apart. I don't know, fatigue, what happened, but anyway, this broke loose, which came over. It's supposed to run right across here and then down right through here, pretty close to these gears here, because the crankshaft spins around and the end of the rod comes right here. With this coming loose, the bottom of the crankshaft or rod, if this moves slightly anywhere, it's pretty tight clearance in here. It hit this and knocked it loose and beat it up. Fortunately, this is a pretty soft metal on this tube, and it's fairly thin. So I didn't see any damage at all to the gears. Everything seems to be okay. But that's the noise I was hearing was in, I think, the crankshaft smashing this thing, this tube. To get this out, you have, and to replace it, you have to pull this gear set here over on this side out to install the new one, to pull this one out and install a new one. So anyway, while I have this all apart, I have to order gasket kits and some parts. I might replace some of the bearings. I will definitely do the synchros. The fourth gear synchro in here was the last year or two. It's been a little rough, so I'm going to go ahead and replace those bulk rings in the synchros. That should help resolve that problem. Anyway, that's what's going on here. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier. This is a 1275 engine, and like I said earlier, too, it does have a cam and head support and polish. It runs really strong. I didn't see any metal worth speaking of in the bottom of the oil pan here, or transfer case, gearbox. I've been really faithful every year. Before I start driving it, like every spring, I change the oil. Because of the gearbox and engine share the same oil or lubricant, it's really important that you change these quite often. I have on the drain plug down here, there's a large magnet that sticks in there, and that collects any metal debris that might be in the oil. That helps a lot to reduce it, because I really didn't see much in there at all. It's just there's a tiny bit of little metal you always get on that magnet, but other than a few pieces of metal off of this tube, I didn't really see anything down in there. So I don't think the engine got hurt. Everything looks fine. But anyway, I shut the engine off. It did not run very long after all these noises happened. So that's where we're at. I'm ordering a bunch of parts. The clutch, everything still looked really good in it. Everything looked fine. So that's where we're at. The car's in storage. I'm going to wrap this up and put it in the corner, order some parts, and get back on working on the MG. Maybe take a break later and put the Mini back together and have it ready for this next spring. But anyway, that's where we're at.